I had something shifted gears, and now everything that occurred that was bad was my fault in one way or another. The thing is, it didn't stop just with random occurrence. It became the mindset that I operated with for everything. At the age of 10 or 12, so this is now like 5 years on from the first real notice of that uh, mindset, I experimented with some homosexual foreplay with a buddy of mine, and the context of it wasn't like trying to be weird or anything. We saw some kind of show on MTV, and it consisted of some icky stuff, and we tried to imitate that because what we saw on the screen um, was different than anything we'd encountered. So again, operating in reality, that wasn't done to be weird, creepy, rude, gross, or anything. It was just something that happened. We were silly, but it wasn't anything that needed to sit on me for years, but it did. I convinced myself, I shouldn't say I did, the enemy said, and I agreed with the conclusion that I was dirty, that I was bad, and that if anybody really got close to me, they'd get dirty as well. So I kind of, I held people at a distance. After a while, I mean, I'm sure that they noticed something. I don't know how much they noticed, but like, I stopped really letting my parents in. And again, this is at like the age of 12, right? Like this is not me as a teenager even. This is just, I used humor as a shield and kept people at a distance because I didn't want them to get that close. I didn't want to chance them getting dirty. It got bad enough to the point where the during the 3 to 6 months before I finally sat down and talked with my dad about what I'd done and what have you, I started having nightmares about. Again, keep in mind this is me as a 12-year-old. Started having nightmares about my dad throwing me out of the house and telling me I didn't deserve my name and I couldn't see my mom or my sister again. Um, in the last few weeks before I finally told him what had gone down, I had nightmares about him castrating me and saying you don't deserve to be a man, etc. My dad has never like raised his hand against me. There's never been anything to denote those kinds of fears in our relationship. That was totally the enemy. Um, the night when I finally told him what happened, like what I'd done and how I felt about it, I was having a discussion, not a discussion, an argument in my head, where one side of me is going, I just have to leave. I can't get my family dirty anymore. I can't have them be brought down because of me, and I can't stay here. It hurts too much. So me as a 12-year-old, I'm sitting in bed contemplating just leaving in the middle of the night. Like it's 12 or 1 in the morning as I'm talking to myself about all this. And dad was downstairs writing for I don't know, maybe Compassion or someone. Um, and I went downstairs, and I say that sentence takes 5 seconds. I took probably an hour getting from my bedroom to my dad's office in the basement because I'd take 1 or 2 steps and I'd just shake and I'd keep arguing with myself. You should just leave. He never needs to know what you did. You don't need to burden him with that, etc. And luckily, the enemy couldn't quite outshout God quietly telling me I needed to go talk with my dad. I expected, based on how God had been presented to me in Sunday schools and in, various books and sermons and what have you. I know, even at 12, that was where my brain was at. I expected for my dad to be angry because I thought God was really angry and disgusted with me. And When I got down to my dad's office, I stood there in the doorway, and he just kind of looked over at me and was like, "Hi, buddy, what's going on?" And I just started crying. There weren't any words involved. I just stood there in the doorway and I cried. And immediately he got up and he came over and he put his arms around me and he said, "It's okay." And I remember thinking to myself that I needed to enjoy that embrace, because even as he's telling me that he loves me and it's okay, I'm thinking that this is the last time that my dad's going to hug me. And I finally told him what I'd done. And rather than throw me out of the house or tell me I was bad or dirty or agree with any of the things that had passed through my own mind that the enemy had encouraged and that had become my identity at that point, he said, "It's okay. And I love you, and God loves you, and he forgives you, and I forgive you, and you need to forgive you." And my dad was Jesus for me that night. And something really specific happened because of that. There was a shift that took place in my mind, in my little Twilight Zone brain, where I realized, if God's real and he's perfect, and my dad's not perfect, and my dad doesn't love me as much or as well as God loves me, but if my dad will love me that way, then God's love must blow that out of the water. And I can't even conceptualize what it really is like, or the depths to which it will reach out for somebody, or the muck that it will ignore and wipe away because of its intensity. So in a nutshell, from that day forward, I operated on this logic that my dad is not more merciful, more loving, or more caring than God. And that means that I have to be willing to approach people from the place that my dad operated on with me that night. From there on, we encounter a whole different spread of issues and lifestyle choices. Me being a teenager, like, I don't want to gloss over stuff, but I also don't want to make these overly long. We'll say that my teenage years were the years where I decided that the church didn't know what it was doing and I knew what I was doing. And that was a mistake. Because I made myself an enemy of the bride. And that's not good, because I'm a part of her. There's this meme that floats around. I shouldn't say meme. There's a saying that floats around on Facebook and Tumblr and all the rest of that, is not going to church because of broken people is like not going to the gym because there's out of shape people there. The church has never been this thing that was perfect instantaneously. And I'm not convinced that it needs to be before we see the greatest revival that the world has ever known. But that's beside the point. My teenage years were, I learned something new about the goodness of God. I don't see it in the church. I'm mad at the church for not seeing it there. And then I'm mad at myself at various points for not seeing it in my own life, because in spite of the fact that that huge healing thing had happened with my dad, that he had restored for me, in no small part, my identity and where God's at with me, there was still a large difference between how God thinks of me and how I thought of me then.